Nick Gauntlet, Private Night, by Austin McKinley, Chapter 6. I watch her enter the banquet hall from the staircase behind the tapestry and buckle my tunic. Expectant faces of the Duke and his guests peer out of the dim candlelight from behind a mountain of delicacies. Fancy, showy stuff. Lots of cinnamon, a sign of wealth. A dozen or so of the Duke's mastiffs, gnaw cast-off bones on the floor. It smells good, only fuels another kind of hunger in my belly. Galena steals towards the head table wearing only a druid's robe. Servants escort her, carrying a huge tray with an extravagant dessert of sponge cake and meringue shaped like standing stones.
Hear me, wise ones, old ones, those who dwell above.
She twirls. The robe almost reveals her as she dances around the dessert tray.
Hear my call and hear my voice. Hear my earnest prayer. Send to me blessings of joy, of happiness, and love.
She throws her arms at the dessert, and it erupts in flame. The audience applauds. Galena grins, breathes heavily. Antimony scowls.
I'll bet it's tart,
says she. I've seen enough. The servants set the tray before the Duke, and he's just about to dig in when I flounder through the curtains from the lab. I figured it out, Your Honor, I declaim. All eyes turn to me. The dogs bark. Galena gasps. I stumble into the head table. Gotta knock off the aquavite. That stuff gets ahead of a man. I figured it, I repeat, and I'm gonna make my case.
What are you doing here?
Blusters the Duke.
What's the meaning of this?
Marcus's death, Calomel, I say. A man's murder.
Murder?
One of the guests exclaims with the appropriate outrage. Yeah, I say. Murder. Plain and simple. But the how and the why were a puzzle.
Is this true, Calomel?
Asks another of the noblemen.
There was a death,
stammers the Duke. But who's to blame? I continue. I swore to uncover the truth. Truth is, it could have been anyone in town had a beef with the blacksmith. But I knew Marcus. He had scruples. I pace the room and continue. There was evidence to suggest Bishop Saltpeter on the grounds of dispatching a dangerous heretic. But he's a Cistercian, and on the night in question he was walled away, with his order, counting his gold and obeying the interdict. I pass by the head table. It could have been Lady Antimony, or her maid Galena, who fed me the false story. Galena looks horrified. I continue. Could have been Raelgar, acting on the Duke's orders. Raelgar fumes from his place at the table.
Nick,
he warns, but I don't listen.
Are we approaching a point?
Asks the first nobleman who spoke.
You seem to think everyone's a suspect.
Truer to say, I think everyone's suspect, says I. But the real culprit is you, Duke Calomel, who are guilty of not having a clue. I advance on the head table. The guards shift uneasily. Doddering old fool, convinced of his lady's purity because he had a chastity belt made. Another rooster in the hen house, eh? I reached over the table and knock on Antimony's pelvis. The guards leap to pull me off, but I stumble out of their reach. I grin at Calomel's obvious surprise. Bad news is, the other man's the one who made the belt. Good old Marcus the blacksmith, the supposed rival alchemist. How likely is it you think he didn't keep a key for himself? I ape a little hammering action.
No,
says the second nobleman. Gratifying gasps and harumphs. I know, I tell them. I never really thought Marcus was an alchemist. But I didn't know he was doing the Duke's lady either. More gasps and harumphs. Antimony blushes redder than her gown. To Calomel I say, you didn't know about that, did you? The crowd grumbles. But why would she hire me? I continue, and point to Raelgar. She obviously couldn't go to the sheriff without admitting the blacksmith was her lover. So she cooked up this little story about the church to throw me off the trail. She came to me, Marcus's former partner, and came on strong. Strong enough to spin me into helping her out of her. How should I put it? Bind?
A trust that was clearly misplaced, says Antimony. Guards, put this dog in the street where it belongs.
The crowd mutters. The guards try to intercept me, but I draw my short sword and hold them at bay. I catch Galena's eye. She's crushed. But I'd be a fool to give up when conquest's within my grasp. I have to see this through. What does it mean to be noble? It means considering what we don't want to hear. We're supposed to be civilized, better, a breed apart, more than just spoiled children privileged by accident of birth.
Which of us is behaving like a child?
Says another. The others laugh in agreement. A nobleman should care about justice. I shout them down. He should take responsibility for what happens in the land under his protection. But this dukedom is spinning out of control, and its lord has his nose in a flask, breathing the fumes.
You're disgraced, sir,
says the first.
You're in no place to lecture us.
Calomel throws the flambe to the floor. Galena looks from it to me, stricken. Calomel brandishes his cane. You have betrayed me, sir. You come into my house wearing the clothes of a knight, but you are none. You take advantage of my wife and my servants. You spread all manner of lies. I knew about you, of course. What you'd done, I don't suppose I should have expected anything different. I glare at the nobles, who compete with each other now to shout me down. When I think I used to be one of you, I mutter. You have no idea what it's like out there. I advance on the table, past a mortified Galena. The world is sick, run by vipers who sit in fancy houses and talk of honor, then empty their chamber pots on your head as you scrap for a coin in the street. The nobles are starting to turn on me, and I know why. I've attacked one of their own, and they'll join blindly in lockstep behind him. I'm addressing the wrong audience, and I've spoken too soon. I'm sick of the lot, I say, and I throw the short sword down. The guards rush me. The dogs howl. Alaric and Boren toss me out on the street and throw the short sword after me. It sticks in the ground, inches from my head.
Back to your pond, filthy scum,
Boren crows. I pick myself up, put my hat on. Better to swim through the filth than live with your head up your...
Beat it, villain,
shouts Alaric. I brush the mud off my coat, pick up my short sword, and limp off. When I drag into my tower later that night, I find my friend Cadmia, the barmaid from the Lady of the Lake, inside. This is getting complicated. Cadmia, what? I start.
It's bad out there, Nick,
she says.
The Duke's men are arresting people without cause. The tavern's empty.
I flop at the desk, rub my temples. What do you want me to do about it? She picks up one of my inventions, a crude set of ground lenses and a tube I used to observe the stars, or the townspeople, from my tower.
I don't know, something.
She looks through it.
That's what you always talk about, isn't it?
She puts the tube down, sees the flagon of brandy.
You want a drink?
Need to clear my clockwork. I shake my head.
Well, this is a red-letter day,
she says.
What's the occasion?
I put my finger in it, I tell her. Mine's at full gallop. Can't stop to water it just now. Cadmia uncorks the flagon, tries to drink, finds it empty. This thing about Marcus may have turned south, I continue. Way south. She sits at the table opposite me.
My father was a knight,
she says.
I keep his sword in the bar. Growing up, he made us feel safe.
You mean you feared him, I suggest.
I respected my father, she corrected. But now I've grown up. There's no such thing as safe.
I take her hand across the table. Don't get the wrong idea. Cadmia is a dear friend. She's served me drinks since she was 15, and that was some years ago.
We lost everything after Richard's revolt.
She refers to the Civil War when Prince Richard allied with the French against his father, Henry II.
My father backed King Henry, and Richard was not forgiving. Once he became king, he punished us. My father was never the same.
Here we are, 2 lives destroyed by Richard's vengefulness. Perhaps that's why she lets me talk sharp about him in the bar. I come around the desk. You shouldn't have to live in fear, I tell her. But respect. Respect's good for a person. You don't respect anything, you wind up like me.
An abusive drunk?
She smiles. I was going to say charming and dangerous. I take her chin in my hand. I don't know what I'm going to do. But just then the door crashes open. Sheriff Relgar barges in on us, at the head of a column of his men.
Railgar, no! Cadmia starts, but Railgar says, "Stay out of this, Tutty."
Close the door, will you? I say to Railgar's men. Were you born in a barn? On reflection, it's not unlikely in a few cases.
I told you this would happen, Nick, says Railgar. Didn't I ask you to let me handle it?
I stand up. We both know it's a slippery pig, I say. And no offense, but I don't think you can corner it on your own.
Well, now I'm gonna have to, says Railgar, 'cause he told me to bring you in. Wanting another guilty party, you're the most suspicious.
And you know I'm gonna have to resist arrest, I tell him. Matter of principle. I look around the place. Say, try not to break anything. The sheriff's men grab for me, punch, bite, and kick. One guard restrains a hysterical Cadmia. I pick up the set of lenses to smash a guy over the head, but can't bring myself to do it. It took a lot of work. Damn, I say. Put the tube back and kick my opponent instead. You have to learn to take your lumps, but I take an awful lot of them. I take a surprising poke to the sternum, feel it bite through 2 layers of hide into the bone. I express my displeasure in the clearest possible terms. Now I think about it, I probably don't use actual words. So it doesn't exactly go my way. Or maybe it does, the way it always goes. Never seem to find myself in a fair fight, per se. Guess that's just my calling. The sheriff's men pummel me within an inch of my leather. One of the men throws my self-trimming oil lamp, which smashes and sets the tower ablaze. Oh, you didn't have to do that, I mumble through a bloody nose. But he's not in a listening mood. The sheriff's men drag me, coughing and beaten, out the base of the smoldering tower. A crowd is gathered there, and they grumble, angry.
You're an unusual man, Nick, says Railgar. Most people would identify a no-win situation, but you have to butt your head against it.
I look up at the tower. Flames appear in the window. To the townspeople, Railgar says,
"Someone get water. Put that out."
A stone hits him in the chest.
"Who threw that?"
Railgar shouts.
"I can run you all in if you like."
He searches the crowd, but knows there's too many to make good on the threat. He's an honest man, but even an honest man will break if you stretch him too thin.
"Right,"
he says.
"You don't want to help? It's your homes'll burn. I wash my hands of it."
The sheriff's men march me off. Railgar walks behind me as the men ward off threatening townsfolk.
"We've you to thank for the tension in the streets," he tells me. "Word of what you said at the castle traveled fast, and it's causing chaos."
"Glad to be of service," says I.
"Townspeople are convinced Duke Calomel killed the blacksmith," Railgar continues. "They're threatening to revolt. I have to oppress them just to maintain control."
"All that does is convince them he's a tyrant," I opine. Duke owns the land, not the people. No reason they should let an impotent old man trample him.
"You're not doing him justice," says Railgar.
"We both know you can't do justice when the Duke's a suspect." I disagree. Feudalism's out of balance. Personal responsibility is the only thing separates us from barbarism.
"What would you have me do?" Railgar asks. "I don't want to lock you up. Hell, it's naive to think that's all the Duke will do to you. So point me in the right direction. Prove me wrong."
"Working on it," I say. "I told you it's a slippery pig."
"More trouble than you're worth, Nick,"
Railgar tells me.
"and that ain't much."
He isn't wrong.